level set before I get into the, a specific solution. Like what carbon removal is moving mass. So we've moved a bunch of mass carbon mass from the slow cycle to the fast cycle. It's like releasing a spring. But there's all this mass. It's up in the atmosphere, up in the upper layer of the ocean, and in the biosphere, we have a bunch of carbon mass. And we need to move that into the slow cycle. So all the solutions that she just talked about, it's about just moving mass, doing work, literal definition of work, from the fast cycle to the slow cycle. So we need to move the carbon into the slow cycle, underground, in the deep ocean, et cetera. So when you think about carbon removal and you see different technologies, and I'll talk about ours and whatever, all it is just moving mass. It's dump trucks, it's ships, it's rails, it's pipelines, it's moving stuff. It's giant fans that are moving a tremendous amount of air. When we're talking about carbon removal and we're talking about getting to 280 ppm, you're talking about moving more mass than has ever been moved in the history of the world. And we have to do it in a timeline like super compressed. So if you want to know if we're serious about climate change, look outside, and if you don't see dump trucks and you don't see trains and you don't see ships moving, we're not serious. We're losing, and everything's going to die that you care about. So like, I'm not like, sometimes it's like, we got to simplify it, and it's like, if you don't look outside and see it, we're not doing it at any meaningful scale, because this is going to be the biggest industry that's ever happened. And it's separate from decarbonization. You have to decarbonize, absolutely, but this is a separate problem. And we tie them together through net zero. Net zero is how we lose. Straight up, that's how we lose. We just lose a little slower. A little slower. So the question on like when you're talking about what technologies and what solutions to use, it's like what's the most efficient way to move the mass? So we have to move the mass. It's a tremendous amount of work. We should just get after it and start moving it. You can do it through moving minerals and increasing alkalinity in the ocean. You can do it by moving iron into the ocean for fertilization, and then you get some leverage off photosynthesis. You can move what we do. We make little buoys out of terrestrial biomass and some minerals, and then set them and spray some kelp spores on them and spread them out in the ocean, and then the macroalgae, seaweed, will grow, accumulate a bunch of extra mass, and then sink to the deep ocean. So it's a way to get like some extra leverage on top of the mass we move. But it's definitely the prettiest carbon removal. I like to think, but at the end of the day, it's just leverage on mass transfer. You just have to move mass. And there's a bunch of little technologies and tweaks, and how do we do it the most efficient? And do we use photosynthesis, or do we use chemistry, or do we use machines? They're all good, but we're not doing any of them at any meaningful scale. We spend more on lawnmowers than we do on carbon removal. And I'm all for cut grass, it smells good, but like, we spend like 20-something billion dollars on lawnmowers every year, and we're not spending a tenth of that on carbon removal. And we need to so we're not doing it. Like, we have a bunch of little companies that are working, and everyone's, cranking as hard as we can, but like, we're just this little tiny thing, this little speck, and it needs to be the biggest thing you've ever seen. So, I'm not being pessimistic. I just want people to level set on like, we're not doing it.